welcome back. I know that I talk about e.l.f. all the time, but as it turns out, there's even more things that I've managed to pick up than I've even reviewed so far on the channel. So I thought it's time to do a full face of e.l.f. and I'm just going to try to use as many different products from them that I have that I can fit into one face. So this might get a little silly, but you know, what's new around here? If you're new, then welcome, I'm Audrey. I review makeup and skincare with a focus on dealing with rosacea and very dry skin issues. And I sometimes like to push things to their logical limits, whatever that might be, including piling on extra bronzer to see what effect it'll have, experiments with blush, especially blush versus rosacea, as well as just having fun with the makeup that I have, and working to give you the best idea of how to work with what you have or where new products might actually be useful for you. So if any of that sounds good, then I hope you'll subscribe. The star of the show today is going to be this new foundation from e.l.f. It's their Soft Glam Satin Foundation. It just released on Monday, and I actually didn't think I was going to have it in time for this video. So I had already purchased, because I had had this before and was just replacing it, the Flawless Satin Foundation from e.l.f. This has been out for years, and it's gotten a little bit harder to find outside of the e.l.f. website, which made me think that maybe they were discontinuing it. I'm curious at some point to test these side by side. Let me know if you're interested in seeing that. I definitely don't feel like I'm going to have time to even swatch things today, just in terms of, you know, keeping this moving and getting through the entire set of things that I have laid out in front of me. But this is a $6 foundation. This is an $8 foundation. You get 1 fluid ounce here, plastic packaging. This has a glass bottle, makes it a little bit heftier, and 0.68 fluid ounces. So I am just looking at these and the kind of older aesthetic of this versus this is much, very much in keeping with the sort of product aesthetic that e.l.f. is doing these days. I am very curious about whether this is going to be replacing it. But before I get started with that, I've already put SPF on. I'm wearing the e.l.f. Invisible sunscreen. It's basically a silicone-y primer with SPF. As the name states, it is invisible. It dries down smoothly. And so it should be a good base for putting makeup on top. And then often I don't do this sort of step, but I will today because usually I wear the glowy SPF, but I deliberately went this route so that I could also work in the Halo Glow liquid filter. I have this in the shade, I think this is shade 0.5. Yeah, so they sort of pitch this as being equivalent to an ultralight foundation. I mean, I would say it's a glowy primer. And as such, I'm going to dot it on parts of my face where I might generally wish to have some glow. And then I'm going to use my sponge here. This is also an e.l.f. sponge to blend that in. I feel like there's enough luminance left from the SPF. Not that it's glowy specifically, but just enough of a sheen that this may kind of blend in when I'm under the lights like this. But you can see that it doesn't have a lot of pigment. I'm pretty flushed right now, and that's coming right through. And I think I'll apply just a little bit more. You know, make sure I get the full effect here. This does come in several shades, which I think, as I talked about in my recent bronzer video, I really think anytime there's pigment, that should be the default. You know, even if it's supposed to be light coverage, even if it's supposed to be fairly translucent, even if there's a tint, then it needs to come in multiple shades for it to actually be appropriate to everyone. And even with the highlighter You think about, what is going to not just look like an oil slick on your face, but add some glow. It needs to reflect light in the same sort of like color range as your skin naturally would, or else it's going to look like you painted something on top, as opposed to I just happen to have acquired a little bit of extra radiance naturally somehow. I feel like my forehead at least is very, very glowy right now, so. And also, by not putting it on my entire face, just in those areas, we'll be able to compare how the foundation looks in the places where I didn't add the Halo Glow Primer as opposed to where I did. And so we can see if this has any luminance to it. Oh, and if I didn't say what shade I have here, I picked up 11 Fair Neutral. There's also a 13, and I have... For reference, I have the Flawless Satin Foundation here in 120, and when I owned this before, I found it to be a pretty good shade match for me. So ideally, there would have been like a one-to-one correspondence between the two, but instead they have two what seem like fairly similar shades, and I couldn't tell from the swatches how the undertone actually varies. So we're going to find that out. It's just a screw-off cap. I'll put some on the back of my hand. Maybe get a little dollop like that. Then tap it onto my sponge. And let's see how this works on my face. Ooh. That is, wow, that's actually a lot. Okay. It does definitely sheer out. Let's try to put less on my forehead. This looks pretty close in terms of the shade. I'll be able to tell if it's whether it's actually too light or not a little bit better if my face ever decides to chill out. It's in the 80s today, so we might just be pink. It does have a very light texture. In terms of things I've tried recently, this is a lighter product than the Fenty Soft Lit Luminous Foundation. And actually, it feels like maybe even a little bit less coverage than the Performer Foundation from About Face, which surprises me. I expected this to maybe just go on a little bit heavier than that. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to put just a little bit more on my cheek to see if I can cancel out a little bit of that redness. To me, it looks like this shade runs a little bit yellow. And I'm wondering if that means that 13 is a little bit more pink. Because sometimes you see that in lighter, nominally neutral shades. Given the price, it's not a big deal to go and pick up a second shade, but I'll probably wait until I'm ordering something else from e.l.f., which I'm kind of on a low buy at this point. I let myself spend a little bit extra to just fill in gaps where I knew that I'd had to declutter expired things and, also pick up some things that I thought might be especially relevant to review. But now that I've kind of filled that in, I'm going to try to hold off on any super new releases until maybe end of July or August or so. We'll see if I actually manage that. There are just so many, I mean, really so many new releases every week. And yeah, even when they fit into kind of familiar categories, there's still, I don't know, I'm enamored with the idea of kind of trying one of everything, you know, like in terms of types of formulas that are out there. Just, there's something, anytime I can like categorize or group things, I find that like very mentally satisfying. And when I look at the new releases, I'm like, I could go so much further, but I'm trying not to get carried away. Well, there's that. I think that's looking pretty good. I think that I would not say this is going to be medium coverage on a lot of people. If you don't have a lot that you are trying to cover up, then maybe, but to me, this really feels like, it's funny, it says medium buildable coverage. To me, this really feels like a light to medium foundation, emphasis on light. I think what I'm seeing from the formula is that it's probably more suitable to being sheared out than it is built up. Right now, this doesn't feel too heavy, but I think it's just going to start to feel like too many layers if I go any further. And I would rather keep it here where, you know, I can smile and not not see product sitting there funny. So that's all right. There's definitely a purpose for something like this, and I could see myself using it more for sure, based on how things are right now. Then our next category is concealer. I have both the Putty Color Correcting Eye Brightener that I use frequently, and also the Flawless Brightening Concealer. This is an interesting kind of delivery mechanism. There's a clicky pen aspect to it and a little brush. And so you can just sort of dab a little bit on. And I think that's the approach that I'm going to take, just because I don't feel like my under eyes are looking way different than the rest of my face right now, just a little bit darker. So brightening sounds appropriate. So I will just put a little bit here and here. And then I'm going to take my complexion duo brush, and I'll just use that to blend it in. This is a very, very, very light product, which I think is really, I think it's a nice option for when you do want just a little bit of lightening up. Because it's not so bad to blend out. Although I feel like I'm going to click, 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 and then suddenly end up with too much. Oh, there we go. All right. Just trying to get some of the redness on the kind of inner corner of my nose there. All right, that's got to be more than enough. Keep trying to not make faces when I'm doing concealer, and not exactly succeeding on that front. It's one thing when it's just me, but then I see it when I'm editing. I'm like, you look like a Muppet again. And I don't want to get it too far down here. Yeah, that's just a nice little bit of evening things out. And I do like the lighter fluid texture with this foundation, you know, that also has that really light way that it's sitting on the skin. I think that makes it a decent pairing. The next, let's do brows. So another thing I picked up, And this is all about me trying to fill out the minimum order to get free shipping, you know. Because I don't know if I would have done this otherwise, but I picked up their new brow laminating gel. And it has this comb. Here, I'll take the cap off. Momentarily foiled by the packaging. So it has a comb. Cap comes off to get at that. And then there is the gel. You unscrew it. And it's sort of this white waxy formula. I've never used a product like this. So let's give it a shot and see what we end up with. I think probably I could have brushed my brows up first, but since I don't have particularly thick brows and I wouldn't describe them as particularly unruly, you know, I can probably get away with this. Maybe I'll do it differently on the other side just for comparison. I don't know which side I'm supposed to use though. That feels like the brush it up beforehand side. This feels like the scrape them in place so it stays side. I think there's no tint to this. So if you have very pale brows like I do, you might be looking to also fill them in. I'll do the other side and then decide if that's what I want. Okay, let's try the little fluffy brush thing first on this side. Cool. The thing that's confusing me is that the cap has a clear and a black part. And so when I pull it up, I'm expecting to only take the clear part, but I actually have to grab it to get the this black section too. And I guess it would sort of ruin the aesthetic, but I kind of wish that the middle part was a different color to make it easier to tell that. But I mean, that's a minor detail. Now that I know, hopefully I'll do it correctly. All right. I saw somebody saying that feathered brows are out, but given this isn't the only newer product I've seen in that category, I suspect that it's another one of those things where we just have a lot of different trends happening at the same time, you know, and for every youth who is considering the 90s thin brow, I don't like how this side looks as much. I think that might also be because I sort of disturbed the foundation, but yeah, this side looks better to me. Maybe it just depends on, you know, your particular brows, how it's going to work. I guess it's not too different. But this side looks more even, and this side looks a little bit more clumpy. So let's see if I can kind of shape that point back down. Cool. I'll play around with it more for sure. This seems like it could be a good and useful hot weather kind of product if I just get the hang of it. Okay, so we have foundation, concealer, brows. I have one more eye product, but I think I'll save that for the very end. So next, let's go with, I have a couple of options. The one that I'm interested in using today is the Putty Bronzer. And I think instead of trying to squint at packages, I'm just going to tell you that I will figure out the shade names and put them all in the description box rather than keep trying to figure out what it actually says on the thing. And I also think if I could just get a little bit organized, I was thinking about making myself cue cards, to set here so that I have like the shade name in front of me. And because, yeah, I never remember. There's too many just like similar things across brands. Anyhow, so this is cream bronzer. I have kind of a light neutral brown shade. So I can do this, but the other thing that I have is, it actually says primer infused blush on the bottom, but it's in the shade Forever Sun-Kissed. And when I look at their website now, that is listed as a bronzer shade, and it sure looks like a bronzer. I mean, see? Very bronzer. It's very lightly pigmented, though. Let me see if I can get enough to kind of swatch. Maybe you can see there. It really is a very light coverage kind of product. And I just think with the amount of my rosacea that's coming through right now, I think it's going to be hard to see this kind of a product and have it stand out enough. So I'll save that to play with later. But for the bronzer, oh, and I have to make sure I grab the right thing. I have two very similar containers sitting here with similar sort of colors. One of them is a No Budge Cream eyeshadow, which I'm not using today because I swatched it and they're not kidding about the No Budge. I want to practice with this before I do it on camera because when I put some on my hand, it dried immediately. So I will need to try it out a few times and make sure that I can actually get something that's like in the ballpark of what I want to be doing with it, so that it's a fair review. And then, oh, and then too many pots that are all the same for sure, because the other thing I picked up is the color correcting eye brightener. I'm going to put that over there so that I can't get confused. Okay, Putty Bronzer. Yeah. Putty Bronzer here. Let's do a big fluffy brush for this. So this is the e.l.f. Ultimate Blending Brush. I use this for bronzer a lot. I'm going to swirl it in the pot here. Try to pick up a little. Let's see if I can get a little bit more. Oh, now I can feel it on there. That might be a little too much. It's okay. It's always the thing with a lot of products is I just think, well, can I see it? I can't see it. I can't see it. And then poof. It's a quite cool toned color. So even with my preference for neutral shades for a lot of this, this might be one that's going to be best used as more of a contour instead of up on the cheek like this. But if that's what you're looking for, I know for folks who have really cool toned skin, mine is pretty neutral. Finding bronzer shades can be really difficult. So these kinds of like ultra cool toned things can just make a huge difference. It's quite pale too. I was hoping for something that would have a little bit more impact on me. It's also pretty, not dry, but not a lot is coming off on my brush at one time, which could just be because I'm at kind of the top of the container. Alright, well, I've succeeded in making my cheeks slightly darker. Let's just put a little bit under here and call it good. Yeah, I expected that to show up more. Let's do a swatch. Let me do a swatch on my hand so we can at least get a better sense of what the color looks like on its own. I'm really not getting much to come off. Huh, interesting. Let's go. Actually, I can do it next to that other bronzer swatch. So it has some pigment. If you're looking for a lighter coverage cream bronzer, I mean, aside from the shade, in terms of the amount of pigment, this feels in the same ballpark as the Makeup by Mario skin enhancer bronzer thing. Soft Sculpt skin enhancer, something like that. I would say this is like in the same sort of pigment territory, you know? And that one doesn't have a cool tone shade, so that could be useful. It would be nice to have something with more surface area in terms of the pot, just to like really get a bigger brush in there. But that's another one that I will play with more and give you hopefully a more in-depth review at some point in the future. Okay, now that I am very mildly bronzed, maybe this is like making up for the other day when I was way over the boundary of what actually makes sense on my skin tone. So the next thing that I'm going to do is blush, and I have the sort of companion product in the series, the e.l.f. Putty Blush. And this one I have in the shade Tahiti, I believe. It's kind of I would say a slightly warm strawberry pink kind of color. And I will go ahead and apply it with the e.l.f. Putty Blush brush. I'll just get some on here like so. Then I'm gonna use the back of my hand to try to even it out a little bit on the brush so I don't get patchiness. Just see if we can bring some color in. Now, these have a reputation for, yeah, why not? It's summer. Let's do the over the nose. Have a reputation for not having great staying power. And I've used, I had a different color of this a while back, and I used it a little bit, but not enough to really be able to say. My skin is generally not the best test bed for those kinds of questions, though, just because things tend to dry down pretty firm on me and stay, thanks to having absurdly dry skin. Is it a feature or a bug? But I think that pink really helps with how things were looking. So I think I'm going to blend it down into the bronzer territory just a little bit. Don't always even. Why not put a little bit on my forehead just up here, to kind of add to the summer vibes. I like the color of this. All right, and then just blendy, blendy, blend. Yeah, I think that's looking nice. Let's have a look close up just quick. I am really happy with how the foundation has set down. Like looking at it here on my chin, there's still the usual texture and things coming through, but I don't have none of it is standing out particularly, you know? It feels like a pretty smooth blend overall, which I'm happy with. And I think the glowy forehead has continued to hold up. Now, the Halo Glow liquid filter, this could be used also as a highlighter on top. I don't really see the point with as much glow as I have underneath, and that's something that's an aspect of working with this that you really should play with, is you know, whether putting the glow, the highlighter, whatever, under or over gives you the best effect for what you want. It's just going to depend a lot on your skin texture and your aesthetic preference. Like Hannah Louise Poston will put maximum glow underneath whatever she puts on, and then maybe add just a little dusting of highlighter on top. But plenty of other people prefer to do it the other way, you know, put the glowiest parts on the top of it. And so if you haven't tried experimenting with doing things like both ways, I recommend that you do. It's another way to just expand what your makeup can do and the effects that you can get from it. I have also the Halo Glow setting powder. I don't think I'm going to use it today. Just I'm not feeling particularly sweaty, even though it is warm. And I think things have set down nicely enough that I don't think that it would really add much. And honestly, I'm just happy enough with how the overall effect of the blush is that I don't want to mess it up by putting another layer on top. So I will save this one for another day. Just, you know, my kind of initial look at it though, it is a nice lightweight powder with a really nice finish when I've played with it just a little bit. Next, let's do lips. I have the Crayon Contour? No. I have the Cream Glide Lip Liner here in a nice bright red. They have, it's just a basic wooden pencil, $2. I think a little bit drier formula, which actually maybe not. Wood pencils are often a drier formula, but this actually, it's quite creamy and it went on super, super fast when I put it on my hand. So I guess I'll need to use a light touch to put it on my lips. But they had some nice looking neutral shades, but since I already have multiple more neutral and like pink beige kind of lip liners, I didn't want to do another one of that, and I didn't have a red lip liner, so this seemed like the thing to pick up. I'm just going to lightly outline. This is extremely creamy and, as a result, a little hard to get even. Yeah, it's definitely not what I was expecting. I thought that it would be a lot drier. And I don't want to completely fill things in, but I think it's going to look a little bit weird. If you're someone who likes to wear just lip liner with a little bit of something on top, this is definitely the right kind of product for it. All right, I'm going to stop there and then blur it a little bit with my finger. It's quite a bold red lip, and I guess I should have stopped to consider whether that went with the look, but yeah, here we are. My fingers are now very, very red. I hope that this does dry down a little, because as it stands, this isn't something that would have very good staying power. Nice and bold. And then to go over it, I have limited edition, but I think they bring it back every year, so not a big deal whether you catch it this time or next. It's the Jelly Pop Glow Reviver Lip Oil, and it's this kind of pink metallic with a little bit of an orange flip, I would say. So let's find out if that'll go with this. It's watermelon? Watermelon-ish. Yeah, this is definitely a look. I think the Jelly Pop shade doesn't have a huge impact with the lip liner the way it is. So I'll have to try it a little bit more. I have played with it a little bit, but I'll need to see how it pairs up with some other things too. It's just a fun thing to pick up if you need another item to get free shipping. That's what lip gloss is for, right? Finally, to go with this bold lip, I have one more item. Something that if you watched the earlier video where I was talking about the products that I didn't need to buy, this is going to be a little funny, but I realized that for a couple of the videos I want to film, mascara would definitely help with the overall idea or look, so I picked up some mascaras to try. Despite being not mascara wearer. This is the e.l.f. Lash and Roll. And I only just found out this is apparently meant to be a copy of one from Benefit that's got like a similar pink cap kind of thing. Not a product I was aware of before that. Benefit, it feels like it's just sort of faded into the background as a brand. I remember, some of their like this box, I think that's them, the box bronzer and blush, maybe not. They've had a couple of things in the past that were pretty like of the moment, but it's been a while. So what's interesting about this one is that it has this wand that has kind of two aspects. There's the sort of smaller bristle, put more product on side, and then the longer bristle part to comb them out. But when I was playing with it, you could really do either. So if you're looking for just a kind of, clean, I hate to say natural when it comes to mascara, but something that doesn't stand out as much, you could just use the longer bristle side of the wand to get that. And I'm not even going to try to talk and put mascara on. I'm just going to do it, and then we'll come back and discuss the array of products that I put on today and see what I think. All right. There we go. Mascara. I feel like this is the kind of formula that's going to be more flattering on somebody with thicker lashes than I have. Mine are pretty sparse. So we get the kind of spindly doll-like effect, which is not my usual vibe, but it'll do for today. And then the one more thing that I always forget is especially because it's warmer out, I'm going to do a dose of setting spray here. So instead of using the same Power Grip one instead of using the Power Grip setting spray that I've done a few times now in videos, I have the Stay All Night Microfine Setting Mist up to 16-hour wear. It says, given how late it is in the day, we're definitely not testing that promise. And I think that this is a copy of the Urban Decay All Nighter, which I've owned at some point in the past but didn't use regularly. I've gotten more into setting spray over the last while, because I feel like it can make a really big difference on dry skin, and I'm guessing on mature skin too, in terms of helping products set down and have a more even finish. Setting sprays can do a lot to affect the overall look of your makeup in the end. And if you are finding that, you know, despite whatever you've tried, things still look cakey and heavy, like you've done all the skin prep, you've done the, you know, light, careful layers and all of that, a setting spray could really be the last thing that's going to make it all come together for you. And there are, not just e.l.f., there are plenty of drugstore options that are worth checking out. So you could try a couple of formulas and see what's going to be a good fit for you. And, you know, maybe you'll find that that's not maybe that won't turn out to be the tool for you, but I think it's always good to experiment. Okay, I'm just going to give it a shake. And now that it's nice and frothy in there, let's see. This is a more alcohol-heavy formula, and I can definitely smell it. But it feels nicely cooling as well right now. I suppose I should have removed the stray mascara smudge before I did the setting spray. That's fine. Just giving everything one more check close up. See if there's anything I need to adjust. Let's recap and review. So maybe going by sort of category, for base products, I guess I took a little bit longer filming today than I thought I did because my battery just died. And so while I was swapping things out, I had another look at how things are going in different lighting. And I feel like things have started to look heavier on my face. And some of that, I think, is the impact of the bright lip and the mascara making the whole effect more makeup-y on me. But I'm just seeing things lose some of that smoothness that I noticed earlier. It has set down really nicely, though, and I'm thinking that this may be just a factor of having that lighter formula. And so I might want to do something like the liquid poreless putty primer or another sort of smoothing primer underneath this instead of doing it directly on top of sunscreen. Although you would hope that the invisible sunscreen having a little bit of that texture would help. So that aspect of it isn't my favorite, but I really do like the finish of the foundation. Oh, maybe let's grab the things I was talking about again. So yeah, the Soft Glam Satin Foundation. I like the finish overall. I think it sets down really nicely. The shade range seemed decent when I looked at it online. I think there's 30, 31, something like that. And there's definitely enough options on the fair side of the shade range that hopefully that means that the deep shades also have enough variation in terms of undertone and depth and all of that. And so I think this is a nice one to check out if you're looking for a light summer kind of foundation. This could be a good option, especially if you want to find something for under $10. With the Halo Glow liquid filter, I'll have to play around with it more as a primer specifically because I am, that's the aspect of it that I'm most interested in. And I don't feel like today I was able to get enough of an impression about how well it works. But I do find the heft of the bottle very appealing, though. I wish, not really a mark of how the product is, but just holding it's very satisfying. The concealer, Brightening concealer, I think this is a nice thing to have in my toolkit. I think it's even a little bit lighter than the NYX Bear With Me concealer serum in terms of consistency between the two. And as I've been testing different concealers, I'm starting to feel that it's good to have in your pocket both kind of a lighter, you know, serum-y one, and then also heavier kind of cream formula, because they can really serve different purposes and help fill in different areas depending on both how your skin is doing that day and also what other base you might be pairing it with. And the clicky pen thing is fun, but I don't know that this is really my favorite application method. I like using the brush. I like less that it's hard to tell how much product you're going to get. And I just, you know, you saw I had to go click, click, click a bunch of times to try to get enough out. It would be nice if it felt a little bit more controlled. But that's a pretty minor quibble. It seems fine. Then for the eye area, we have the Brow Laminating Gel and the Lash and Roll Mascara. I think the mascara, this is great for the reason that I bought it, which was that I wanted to be able to demonstrate a fairly natural looking mascara for an upcoming video, and this fills that gap. But I think for me, if I was choosing to wear mascara, I feel the same way about it as I do with a lot of other eye makeup, which is that I don't want to just enhance what I have, but I'm going to be going for some kind of aesthetic option, you know, that does something more. And this particular like kind of wispy doll-like lash just doesn't appeal to me at all. So aside from having this for reviews and to talk about, it's not something that I would probably put in my own like personal rotation for, you know, glam dress-up makeup or something like that. So good enough for what it does, but not something that I would have a need for. And my first impression of the Brow Laminating Gel is pretty positive. This was definitely just a whim, and I kind of like, I like the feathery look, and especially how it came out on this side. This one I think just needed a little bit more finessing, and I will have to play around with this plus a brow pencil and see if there's a combination that gives me like just a little bit of brow definition and that, like a nice texture to it to play with. I could see this staying in my regular rotation. For the cheeks, we had a Putty Bronzer and a Putty Blush. I liked the blush better than the bronzer. I think this felt more pigmented even than the bronzer, you know, both when I swatched it on my arm and just applying it. I didn't really feel like, the sort of texture of it and everything, it just didn't impress me with this first look. I'll play with it more. I might come back later and say, oh, actually, it turns out if you know, ... then that's the best way to work with it. But at first glance, this probably isn't something that I would pick. I'm sure that there are other cream bronzers that are going to have a better sort of mix of like formula and level of color. On the other hand, if you are looking for a very lightweight, you know, a little bit hard to overdo it, cool toned bronzer, then this might be of interest to you. And time will only tell whether the blush has enough staying power or not, but it seems like it's set down here with everything else pretty well. So if anything exciting happens when I go outside later, then I'll post a comment with some wear notes. If you don't see a comment, it just means that things kind of stayed like they were and there isn't much news to report. And then for lips, the Cream Glide Lip Liner. I like the color. I am not as big of a fan of this level of like really creamy, smeary kind of lip liner. It's just personally not what I go for in general. If I'm going to use a lip liner, it's because I want something that's going to be fairly budge proof, and this just isn't giving off that vibe. And the Jelly Pop lip oil, I already knew that I liked the e.l.f. lip oil formula. This is just that, but with some tint and some sparkles. So very summery, very fun. Again, like I would say this is the thing that you pick up as an extra, you know, if you're already at Ulta or whatever. I don't think you need to go out of your way to get it, but not a bad thing. I'll keep using it for sure. And then I can't really give you a review of the setting spray because what it's doing right now doesn't tell you very much about how it actually functions as a setting spray. So it's probably going to do its job, but again, if it doesn't, I'll post a note. And since I know that I've been filming for quite a while, I need to just wrap it up and call this a day. So thanks for being with me here today. I hope that this tour of e.l.f. products was interesting and useful to you. If you haven't subscribed yet, then I hope you will, because I have more reviews like this to come. Take care of yourself, stay cool if you're in the heat zone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.